One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. Okay, so I experienced something today that I need to talk about because I'm like all planning this podcast episode out, and I'm looking at, oh yeah, let me grab the examples from the YouTube channel and from previous podcast episodes. Y'all, how have we never covered this on the podcast? I'm flabbergasted. I know, fancy word, it calls for it today because that's exactly how I feel. How have we never talked about creating an elevator pitch? Oh my goodness. So I actually have to backtrack what we originally were going to talk about, because we were going to talk about why is your content elevator pitch not working? But we haven't even covered what an elevator pitch is. So first we got to talk about that. Then we can talk about why yours may not be working. So we have a lot to cover in today's episode. So let's get right to it. Welcome to the Proffitt Podcast, where we teach you how to start, launch, and market your content with confidence. I'm your host, Crystal Proffitt, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of content creation, this is the show that will help be your time-saving shortcut. So let's get right to it, shall we? I'm still just so confused. We've been doing this for 4 years and we've never talked about elevator pitches. And the reason why this blows me away is because we have talked about this in Proffitt Podcasting. So if you are a student of my digital course, Proffitt Podcasting, then you're like, oh, Crystal, you've taught us what elevator pitches are. Like, we know what these are. But if you're not in the program, maybe you have no idea what an elevator pitch is, or you've heard the concept, but you've never actually applied this to your content. So we're talking about, like, this is a multifaceted episode today, all centered around an elevator pitch. Now, this is not specific to your podcast. This could be for your live stream, if you do a weekly live stream show, or your YouTube channel, or your business. Like, we could just keep zooming in or out, however you want to look at this, but the concept is going to stay the same. The idea of an elevator pitch is you telling someone what you do, what you're all about, in the amount of time that it would take to ride an elevator. So you got about 30 seconds to 90 seconds. I guess depends on how many floors you're going up and down. I mean, let's be honest, I don't do a lot of traveling, but when I do, I always think of this concept of, okay, man, it would be so fast if I stepped into an elevator and someone said, oh, I like your bag. What do you do? If someone saw, I'm imagining myself now in an elevator with a whole bunch of microphone equipment, and I would probably pretend to have my AirPods on, like talking to someone, so I wouldn't have to talk to a stranger and explain to them all the things that I do in content creation. Because once you get me going, like, I can't stop. So I kind of just avoid those conversations altogether. Like, let's just be really honest. This is what happens a lot of the time. But I want you, if you're in a situation, you're at a dinner party, and this is exactly what I use whenever I'm teaching this in my program. I say, okay, we're at a dinner party, and an aunt that you haven't seen in a really long time says, hey, Crystal, what are you up to these days? Tell me a little bit about what it is that you're doing. And they could say in your business or, in general. And this would give you an opportunity to talk about your content if you wanted to, or talk about your business, talk about your family, talk about whatever it is that it is. But you don't want to be that person that rambles on for 10 minutes. And we're like, wait, what was the original question? Why are they still talking? You want to be the person that says, oh yeah, I found out that content creation is super overwhelming for a lot of people that run an online business. So I teach people how to strategize and create content with confidence. Boom. We need a mic drop. Okay. That is my off the cuff elevator pitch of what I do today. And that is how, it leaves everything open for people to ask more questions, right? But it's also not a dissertation that would take me 30 minutes to stand up and present. That was probably 15, 20 seconds. And you want it to be something short, sweet, and actionable. And I actually have a few components that I want you to break down when it comes to creating your elevator pitch. So, number one, if you're taking notes, now is the time. These will be in the show notes. So crystalproffitt.com/episode 336 if you want to follow along with what we're talking about. But number one, who is your audience? Who is your actual audience? Because you need to call them out at some point. You need to say, hey, I help content creators. I said that. Or I create people that have an online business. I said that as well. So it kind of depends on your genre, your topic, or who you serve on how you will call them out. It could be a formal label that you give to your audience. If you say, oh yeah, I help working moms with children that have special needs, that's very formal, very specific. Or you could say something that is a lot more relaxed. And, I help, I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head. I shouldn't do these things where I think of them on the fly, but I also know that it creates a lot of ridiculous things that we end up talking about, which is why I do keep doing it, because then it adds a little mystery and fun to the whole conversation. But I think about something that's more informal. Let's coffee lovers that, I don't know, love a pour over. I know that's getting real fancy, but it's a thing. And so that's what I could talk about. Who does strip coffee anymore? We love a good pour over. And I know y'all, if you don't know what that is, it's okay. I don't get that snobby with my coffee either, but I'm just saying there are coffee snobs out there that totally get that. And they'd be like, oh, they're talking to me. And that's what you want. You want people to say, oh, that's for me, or that was created for me. So it's really important that your audience knows that you are talking to them. The next thing that you can talk about in your elevator pitch is the main problem that you solve for your audience. So you could use this as like an adjective that you would use to describe your audience. Like, I help overwhelmed content creators create content with confidence. I know there's a lot of C words like this. Like we could make that we could tighten that up a little bit, but I would help people that are overwhelmed or struggling to come up with new ideas. Like, there's a lot of different ways I could go about the problems that I call out for my audience, but you want someone nodding and saying, "Oh yeah, that's me." Or, "Oh yes, I've experienced that." Like, you're talking to me. That is a problem I have and I need the solution to it. So people know, you want people to say yes or no. You don't want this maybe in the middle. You want someone to immediately say, "Oh, that's not for me, but I actually know someone who struggles with that. I could tell them about your content." So you want that immediate yes or no with the people that you're giving that information to for your elevator pitch. And then the third thing that I always like to talk about, and again, this will kind of depend on how you're talking about or what you're using your elevator pitch for. If it's for your business, your podcast, your weekly live stream, your Instagram account, like whatever it is, you want to have the name of it. So if I were to say, well, I help overwhelmed content creators create a better strategy in my business, Proffitt Media, through my coaching programs, my free content, and the services that I offer clients. That was very specific in naming out my business. It was like, I also talked about my podcast, my YouTube, like all those things, but I was generally speaking about my business. So this is something that you can apply depending on, it's like a chameleon effect for an elevator pitch, but you do want to call out what it is that you're talking about. Because if I were to just say, "Oh, I do this," specifically, like I help people with their content, but where? Is it on your website? Is it on your podcast, your YouTube channel? Do I need to go to Instagram? Like, where are the specific pieces? So here would be a quick elevator pitch for my Instagram account. For overwhelmed content creators that are looking for quick tips, I have a lot of reels on my Instagram account, and you could come see the behind the scenes in my stories where I share a little bit more about content creation, but also you get a peek into my personal life, being a mom and a wife and a content creator. So that is my short and sweet elevator pitch for my Instagram account. All right. So you're with me, right? You're nodding along. You're saying, "Yes, Crystal, we get this." Okay, awesome. The next thing is, we talked about your target audience, the problem, the name of your content. What about the solution? So how do you actually help people with their problems? So let's go back to the Instagram example. I say, I give you tips and tricks to create your content with confidence. So I'm giving you, like, this is the solution to your problem. The problem is you're overwhelmed, you're struggling, maybe you can't come up with content ideas. Well, the solution is you going to my Instagram and watching some of those quick tips and strategies that can get you those quick wins. That's really what social media is about. It's not about watching hours and hours and hours of videos. That's what YouTube is for. I could flip the script and talk about YouTube in a different way, but specifically Instagram would offer those quick tips and solutions. But if I were talking about my YouTube channel, let's flip that for a second. I would call out my target audience, like, "Hey, overwhelmed content creators." They're overwhelmed. That's the problem. And I called out who they are. You can go check out my YouTube channel at Crystal Proffitt so you can watch some of the podcast editing tips and tricks that I have, that you can watch my videos and tutorials that'll show you behind the scenes what I do in my business to save time, save energy, and save all those hours of editing that tend to overwhelm and really just create burnout for content creators. And go check those out on my YouTube channel. That was a little bit sloppy. Again, I don't have all these written out. I'm kind of doing them on the fly, but I wanted to give you some examples of that is what the solution would be. You could go to my YouTube channel to watch these videos that would show you how to edit your podcast to save you time, money, energy, all of those things. Okay, so that was number 4. Number 5.
Being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants. Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
I want you to list out, and I'm going to give you an example of like a full-blown, maybe I should even, you know what? I'm going to include a free resource. I want you to see this example page of elevator pitches. I'm literally going to take a page out of Proffitt Podcasting and share it. It's going to be a PDF form of one of the lessons, but we are going to talk about the 2 to 3 topics that your content focuses on. Now, again, this is the more formal approach of your elevator pitch, but I always recommend people write all of these things out and practice it. I know it's going to sound so silly. You're like, Crystal, I'm not in an elevator with anybody. I'm in my room with my dog. Well, practice it with your dog and say it multiple times. But the more you feel comfortable with what you're saying and what your content is about, then you'll just feel more confident. And that's what we're doing here. We're trying to create content with confidence, right? So I want you to feel comfortable coming up with 2 to 3 topics right out of the gate that your content focuses on. So I've already kind of said a few here, but we talked about podcasting tips, right? I give you editing tips and tutorials. Or if I wanted to talk about the Proffitt podcast, I could say we have guest interviews with experts, all from digital course creation to podcast guesting, as well as how to handle your business finances. Those are just a few simple, quick things that I listed off that are from previous interviews that I had. I could go into my solo content. There's so many different ways that you can go with the topics you talk about for your elevator pitch. You want a potential listener or audience member to say, oh, I need that. That's what I've been looking for. Okay, this is why we list out some of the topics, because then you want people to identify some of the places where maybe they didn't even know that was a problem for them. But when you offer up the solution, they're like, oh yes, I've been looking for podcast editing tips for Audacity because I'm struggling with that. I really need to go I need a refresher on podcast editing. So very, very important. And then number 6, calls to action. You cannot have a great elevator pitch without a call to action. And I know that this sounds super strange, especially if you're taking the literal context of what an elevator pitch is, like meeting a stranger in an elevator. But I want you to think about getting comfortable with calls to action. You have to feel comfortable saying, yeah, if you want some more tips, tricks, and strategies on how to edit your podcast, go follow me on Instagram. I share them there all the time, like several days a week. I'll post an Instagram reel that is just under a minute, and you can go check out if you're interested. It's pretty non-committal, right? I'm not asking someone to give me their email list or pay me thousands of dollars. I'm just saying, hey, if you want to know more about this, go check out my Instagram account. Yeah, sure. It's all there. It's free. And it's kind of a passive way to get people interested in what you're doing. But what I love about this is the more you practice it, the better you're going to get. So let's recap real fast. So there's 6 elements of a great elevator pitch. So number 1, calling out your target audience. So important. Number 2, what is the main problem that your audience faces? Number 3, what is the content name that you're talking about? This is where you'd insert your podcast name, your YouTube channel, Instagram, what your business, but you need to call that out explicitly in your elevator pitch. Number 4, your solution to their problem. How are you going to help solve your potential customer, listener, audience member? How are you going to solve their problem? Number 5, I love listing out 2 to 3 topics that you cover in your content, in your business, however you're using an elevator pitch, like call those things out. So it's those immediate, oh yeah, I really, really need that. And then number 6, calls to action. Y'all know I love calls to action. You could say, listen to the podcast, visit my website, follow me on social media, whatever it is that applies to what you're talking about. But it's so, so important that you list this information out whenever you're giving your elevator pitch. So I told you I would give you an example. So here is mine. Again, this is written out and I have practiced this many, many times, but this is actually the template you're going to find in the PDF document. So go to the show notes, crystalproffitt.com/episode 336, and you're going to find this. But here it is. Podcasting can be so overwhelming. There are many moving parts. This is the main problem. And that's where the Proffitt Podcast comes into play. So on the podcast, we strive to teach entrepreneurs how they can start, launch, and market their podcasts. We discuss everything from understanding the technology, content planning, and growth strategies for podcasters. You should check it out if you're interested in podcasting as a marketing strategy for your business. You can find the podcast on my website at crystalproffitt.com/podcast or your favorite podcast app. Do you have any other questions about podcasting? So do you see how this was all, and again, it feels a little forced because I'm like reading it, right? I'm not speaking it. That's not how I would typically talk to someone if I were in an actual elevator, but it's a great example of what you can write down. And in the PDF, you'll see where I've highlighted, like, this is the main problem. Here's the podcast name. Here's the target audience. Here's the, like, I have everything highlighted to where you could just fill in the blank and have a template for how you're going to talk about your content. So if you've taken Proffitt Podcasting, you're in Proffitt Podcasting, make sure you go check out that lesson. But also I'm going to have it linked in the show notes. So crystalproffitt.com/episode 336. And the reason why all of this is so, so important is because I want you to know how to talk about your content. I want you to practice this because at the end of the day, it is not enough to just create an amazing podcast episode. You have to be able to talk about it. You have to be able to tell people about it because who's going to know it's there? If you create this amazing thing, but you don't tell anybody about it, why would anybody know it's there? How would they go listen if they don't even know that the content you're creating exists? So this is the basis of all content marketing is you have to be able to talk about it. So let's clear up some things real fast because like I said, at the very top of the episode, the whole reason why I wanted to create this podcast was because I wanted to talk about elevator pitches and why they're not working. Because there's some things that I see in the online space a lot. And that is the way that people are talking about their content and why it's not working. So I wanted to give you all the basics first. And then these are some of the things that I want you to avoid. So your content elevator pitch may not be working because your message is confusing, meaning you're using language that your audience doesn't use or they don't understand. And I always think of this as, I bet everybody knows someone that is very, very educated. And these very educated people tend to talk a little bit higher above. I'm using an example of myself. Like I've talked to people that are really, really smart. They're either doctors or they're scientists. And like when I get around them, I immediately feel dumb. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Sometimes I will actually say that depending on how close I am to them. Other times I just kind of sit there and pretend that I know what they're talking about. Or I'll just say, oh yeah, sure. Yeah. And I follow along, but I will typically ask a lot of follow-up questions. But what happens is they're using language and vernacular that I'm not comfortable with, or I have no idea what that means. Even just now, y'all, I was trying to sound smart. Let's be real. I just used the word vernacular. I never say that on a regular basis. I don't know where that word came from, but if you don't know what that means, you're gonna be like, Crystal, come on, like, let's bring it back down. Why are you trying to be all smarty pants on us? I'm sorry. I do apologize for that. But it's confusing. Don't be confusing. Don't use language that the person you want to work with doesn't use, or a potential audience member would have no idea. So don't be cutesy, don't be confusing, because you can lose people really fast. And then the second thing I want you to avoid is your audience not being very clear. So I'm trying to think of a great example for this, because I talk to podcasters, content creators, live streamers, YouTubers. Like, there's a lot of different people I could list off in like who falls under the content creator category, bloggers, all this. I could just keep going on and on. But the one that I always default to, and I know it's because I'm part of this demographic, is I'm a mom. But as you can imagine, there is a full spectrum of motherhood. There are new mothers, there are empty nesting mothers, there are single mothers, there are mothers with special needs children, there are mothers with multiple children, there's like mothers that just have one child. Like, there's a whole spectrum of motherhood and parenting that I could get a lot more specific about. So this is where the concept of niching down can really help you if you want to get clearer with your audience. So take that into consideration. If your message isn't working, if you feel like something is a little off, look at your audience and look at how you talk to them. And that can really help draw out some of maybe the confusing language and help you really, really hone in. And then the third thing that I often see that people, like, why their content elevator pitch isn't working, is they're not calling out the value in what their content delivers. And this is for all marketing. This is not just for an elevator pitch. This is for all marketing. And I've gone on this rant many a times now on the podcast and on the YouTube channel, but y'all, it's not enough to say, there's a new podcast episode, you should go listen. Y'all, that is not marketing. That is not marketing. Period. The end. There is no value being exchanged. Why should I go listen? Is there a reason? Did you interview someone interesting? Did you have a conversation that we all need to hear? Like, why? Why should I actually go and listen to what you're talking about? And I dug something out of the archives just for you. Just for you. This is something I talked about in a recent training that we did. Oh my gosh, like I'm so embarrassed. You can't see the video. The video it's not out there for you to see, but I stripped the audio from this video. This was on my website. Y'all, I'm so embarrassed. This is from 2018. It's a video I created for my website, and I wanted to showcase what it is that I talked about. And I'm so glad you cannot see this video. The lighting quality is horrendous. Like, I am literally sitting under a light. It looks like I'm being interrogated by someone because I'm totally blown out. You can't hardly see my face. It's so bad. But I want you to listen to this because it is an example of what not to do. What not to do, because you're like, what is she even talking about? And I list off so many topics that it's confusing. You're like, who is this even for? Did she even say, like, who is the person she's actually talking to? So I'm giving you an example of what not to do. So take a listen to this and then we'll meet back. Have you ever felt like you're, it's kind of distracting. Have you ever felt like you're not good enough or you have no idea what you're doing? Yeah, me too. But I have good news for you. You don't have to. Hi, I'm Crystal and I write at crystalproffitt.com, where we talk about starting new things all the time, even when we have no idea where to begin. Some of the topics that we include are marriage, parenting, raising kids, taking care of yourself, writing, and so much more. I know as women, sometimes we can struggle with the identity of who we're supposed to be or which path we're supposed to take and whether it's the right one or not. But my passion is to share this one simple message. No one has it all figured out, but we can all start somewhere. And the number one thing that the rookie audience appreciates is the raw struggles that we share about this life as a rookie, because it's crazy, guys. Not everyone has it all figured out. And sometimes it's really hard to talk about this. And let's be honest, it's really tough to talk about the hard stuff. So I'd love for you to join in on the conversation either by listening to the podcast. I'd love for you to join in on the conversation either by listening to the Rookie Life podcast or reading the stories that we share here on the blog. And I'll leave you with this one final thought. Keep it up, rookies, because we all have to start somewhere. Bye. Okay, now that you heard that, I know it's bad. Like, it's so cringeworthy, but I wanted you to know I had to learn how to get better at this too. I didn't just wake up one day and say, oh, I know exactly how to talk to my audience, what they need from me, all that. This has been an evolution. It's been an ever-changing process. And even today, my elevator pitch is different than what it was 6 months ago. It's something that's constantly changing, but you have to work on this and you have to practice it. That way, the next time you're at a conference, the next time you're on a Instagram live or a podcast episode, or you're being a guest on someone's live stream and they want to know what you do, you can give it in a short and concise manner that makes it sound like you know what you're doing and you sound professional, you sound legit, all the things. So I want you to practice this. So again, go to crystalproffitt.com/episode 336 to grab this download. But I wanted to give you a few more parting words. And this is what to do when your elevator pitch isn't working. So we already talked about what's not working, right? Now let's talk about what to do about it. Don't use the cutesy language. Don't use the cutesy, confusing stuff. Use simple layman's terms that everybody can relate to, because it's going to make your message clearer. The second thing is get into actual conversation with your audience so that you're speaking their language and you're not just trying to assume what they want to hear or how they would talk about something. Y'all, this is literally the reason. It's one of the main reasons why I do a live stream every single week. I do. I go live on my YouTube channel, the Facebook group, LinkedIn, all the places. I'm live because I want to engage with my audience. I want to know what y'all want to know. I want to know what questions you have. I want to know the language that you use. If you're frustrated about something, how do you actually verbalize that? Because I use that language in my marketing, in my show notes, whenever I'm creating more content. It's like the fuel to the fire that keeps everything going. So if you're not in conversation with your audience, do it. Figure out how to do that. Is it a Facebook group? Is it creating an email list where people can, reply back to you? Is it a live stream? What does that look like? But you've got to figure this out. If you're not in conversation with the people that you're trying to reach, figure out a way to make that happen. I promise it will be worthwhile and it would give you a place for you to practice your elevator pitch. Y'all, this was so fun. I loved talking about this. I know it has everything to do with marketing. That's why I love it. But how have we not talked about this before? I'm still kicking myself. I'm like, how is this actually possible? We've never covered. I looked on my YouTube channel. I looked in the podcast. This has never been covered. But here we are. We've done it. Check. We've checked off that box. And now I want to know what questions you have about creating an elevator pitch. So reach out to me, send me a DM on Instagram. I would love to know what you thought. Tag me, take a screenshot where you're listening to this episode and tag me on Instagram. I'm at crystalprofittTX. I want to know your thoughts. I want to know what questions you have. But that's all I have for you today. So make sure you go check out the show notes, crystalproffitt.com/episode 336. Go download the PDF guide that can help you create your elevator pitch for your content. And as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Proffitt Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message, because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Crystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Crystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.